welcome to the Digital Education Station, everyone. I'm Ryan Fran, the Chief Communications Officer for the Arcadia Unified School District, and pleased to be joined by Greg Gazanian, the Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer. Greg, thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan.
Appreciate it. So today we are talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, better known as DEI. And Greg, we brought you in because you've been leading our DEI effort this school year specifically. And so we just wanted to update people about what we've been doing for this year. We'll touch a little bit about the past and then how they can get involved and connect with you and DEI throughout Arcadia Unified. So I guess let's just start with this year, school year, speaking in those terms from fall semester to heading into the spring now. Where kind of we've had a couple meetings, kind of give us the update as far as what we've done DEI wise, especially with some community meetings and outreach.
Thanks, Ryan. I really appreciate that. As I believe a lot of people know, diversity, equity, and inclusion have been topics of a lot of conversation over the past few years and even longer. So in Arcadia Unified, we want to spend some time to engage with our community, to engage with our staff, our students, and really as many people as we could talk to in the scope of Arcadia to learn what does it mean to us, where does it impact us, and where might we want to explore further. And in fact, this process mirrors a process we used to emerge our purpose statement and values about 6 or 7 years ago. At the time, we spent a whole entire year talking with people, listening, and saying, who are we as a district? And what we ended up with was our purpose statement, which is to challenge and inspire students to make a positive and profound impact on their world, and our values to collaborate, to think critically, to be creative, to offer empathy, and to learn from failure. We surveyed our stakeholders after we did that process, and well into the high 90% of people said this absolutely represents us. So we knew we had a process that works well. And as we begin to explore diversity, equity, and inclusion, we decided to use that same process of spending an entire year listening and engaging with as many of our stakeholders as possible to learn what this means in Arcadia and the scope of education. So that was our starting point. We kicked off the year in September with a community engagement night. We had well over 50 people attend, closer to 100 in fact, and we had some really good conversation about what DEI is. At these evenings, we focus on generally 3 questions based on where we currently are in the process. For that first evening, we talked about if you could define diversity, equity, inclusion, how would you define it? Because we want to make sure we're all on the same page. We talked about, are there any bright spots that come to mind in Arcadia Unified? Meaning, if you believe that things are happening, good things, positive things in the scope of DEI in Arcadia Unified in education, where's that happening? We got a lot of positive feedback about our technology and ways we've offered opportunities to kids. And finally, moving forward with this process, what should we be looking at? What should we be curious about? We got some really good feedback on that.
Yeah, no, that's great. I was at that first meeting, and it was good just to put up the questions and have people are at tables and talking and great discussions and different opinions, and it was just a nice night of conversation to come together. One, to comment, and we won't get into specifics about what people said and how they said it and that kind of context, but it was interesting that somebody did point out, as public education entities and organizations, our foundation for DEI is really, really good to start with because we're inclusive of everyone. Everyone gets the same technology, the same opportunities throughout, no matter where you come from, who you are. So it was nice to hear that as far as public education, that it really is, evenly spread out and equitable among all. So it was a nice kind of point to focus on and just realize we're in a good place in public education as a whole. Room for improvement and different discussion topics, of course. So that was kind of nice to hear. How long are the meetings? And then we'll talk a little bit about the second meeting that was had more recently.
That's a great question, Ryan. Traditionally, I think people would say, oh, meetings tend to be long in public education. The feedback we receive before the meeting and after is that an hour is the right amount of time. We recognize that people are very busy. They have, especially our parents, our students, there's homework and activities. We keep our meetings to 1 hour. It's a lot to fit in an hour, but we want to make sure we respect people's time.
So meeting number 2, what were the questions that were discussed meeting number 2?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ryan. So we took everything we learned from our earlier surveys, our interviews, and from our first community engagement night. We broke it down into several themes, and we took some of those most mentioned themes. We made those the questions at the second meeting. We like to call that the accordion effect. As we engage with our community, we go broad, we bring it in and say, "What are we hearing?" And then we put it back out to the community to say, "Does this sound right? Does this align with really what you're feeling about these topics?" So there were three questions that we focused on again at the second community engagement night. The first one was an exploration of the theme, which is students should have the resources and opportunities that they need in order to be successful. The first thing we said is, do you agree with this? Because we can look at the data we have back. It may seem like this is something that most people agree with, but we always want to confirm that. And we had some really good conversation about that. The second thing we talked about at the second community engagement night um, was that students should feel safe, valued, and welcome in Arcadia Unified. And again, we said, do you agree with this? What might this look like in Arcadia Unified? The third question was an interesting one. A lot of good conversation around it. And the third question was, as we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion in Arcadia Unified, what should we call it? Which may seem like a simple question, but it really came from a few different places. Some folks said, like, what if we called something else that feels more accessible or that people would be able to understand maybe in more clear of terms? Some other folks in the feedback we received said, because we're going through this process, maybe it should be called something about it, something different or something specific in Arcadia Unified because we've put this work in, it'll mean something specific to us. Other folks said it should absolutely be called diversity, equity, inclusion. However, we should change the words because there's different levels of importance among those words. So it was one question. It really came from a lot of different places. And, I think as we've discovered, what you call things matter. It's important. So we spent a lot of good time discussing uh, how do we want to refer to this moving forward. And again, because of that accordion effect that I mentioned, this isn't the end. This wasn't a decision that we made because of directly that night because of what people are saying. But we're going to take that information. We're going to go through it along with some additional ways we're gathering information right now, which I'm happy to share as well. And we're going to continue to put it back out in the community, back and forth, as we learn more collectively about these themes and how we perceive it as a community.
Definitely interesting conversations, and everyone has kind of you can go a million ways, as you
Mhm.
said, like what do we even call this, and you have different opinions to get that foundation of what will this be referred to in this important work. If people weren't able to be at the meetings but they're still interested, they still want to provide feedback, input, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, so it is very important to us that people have as many opportunities to engage in this process as possible. So obviously, people are welcome. We love to have them at the community engagement nights. If they are not able to be at that community engagement night, we also send out all those same questions to everyone on our DEI mailing list. We sent that invitation out to all parents and guardians of the district, all high school students, all staff, uh, and you're welcome to join that mailing list and we'll send all those updates out there. So community engagement nights, we send out those exact same questions to everyone on the DEI mailing list. And finally, we are starting one-on-one and group interviews right now. I mean, if you couldn't make to the evening, maybe you don't enjoy writing your answers or that doesn't feel like a good fit, myself or someone else on our team would be happy to sit down with any stakeholder or community member in Arcadia Unified to just explore these themes, to listen, to hear any questions or thoughts or concerns that you want to share as we go through this process of really emerging these themes in the context of diversity, equity, and inclusion in Arcadia Unified, and just continue that exploration throughout the year.
And before we get to kind of the final steps as we end out this school year, as we're here in late February, this is not the first, you know, look at DEI and Arcadia Unified. Um, Previous years and throughout, we've done a lot as well. What are some of those things, just holistically, that Arcadia Unified has done in a DEI lens and approach?
Yeah, and that's something I'm always happy to share. Our administrative team, even in the midst of COVID, did an in-depth year-long training with all of our administrators around themes of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Many of our schools have clubs and focus groups and student groups around these topics and discuss them often. I know we have some teacher groups who have really focused on this work as far as what it looks like in the classroom. And again, so many of our um, really staff and students and community members have explored this in different ways. So none of this process is to say that it has not happened and is not happening as we explore these topics. This is really exploring from a very broad perspective. What does it look like collectively as a
Yeah.
district?
Yeah, I know the high school has a great DEI club on campus that they started a couple of years ago that's
Hmm.
doing really important, impactful things as well. So as we wrap up here, Greg, the end of the year, any idea on timeline for another meeting, more opportunity for involvement and feedback from the community, parents, students, and staff?
Absolutely. Again, we'd love for anyone who's interested to engage in those ways I described earlier with the interviews, with the surveys, being on our mailing list. We will likely be having another community engagement night in the next couple months. But the best way to learn about those opportunities is to be on the mailing list. So I would encourage people to sign up for that. Ryan, collaboration is our number one value in Arcadia Unified. So I would encourage people, if you have a thought or an idea or a concern, that you just reach out. Again, they're welcome to reach out to me. My email address is on the website and on all of these DI emails. I would love to hear from people. We love getting suggestions, and we'd love to engage in new ways if it feels like a different way would be helpful.
Greg Gazanian, Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer for the Arcadia Unified School District. Greg, appreciate you stopping by and giving us an update on kind of where we're at this year and how people can get involved if they do choose to do so. And we really appreciate the information and insights. And that is it for our digital education station on DEI in the current school year. Thanks, everyone, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, Ryan.